Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the show. Welcome to It's Still Real to Me. I'm your host, John Kucher, aka Johnny Fashion. With me as always, Big Bad Harmon sitting right across from me. How are you, Harmon?
Doing good. So it was a sad week.
It is a sad week.
It's a sad week for professional wrestling.
Yes, it is.
I mean, nobody died this week.
Nobody died.
I mean, Axel Rotten did die last week.
Oh, last week, yes.
Axel Rotten died? Oh, sorry.
Dave hasn't even been introduced yet. He's already like, what?
Welcome to the show, Dave Dyer.
Yeah.
I just ruined the intro of the show. Oh my
You
God.
sure did. That's all right. David Dyer is back with us. Our good buddy Dave Dyer from across the country, out in Seattle area.
It's true.
Going on, Dave? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right, man. The 206 checking in with the 207. Pretty happy to be back on the show. And
You've been thinking about that all day.
Axel Rotten is dead. That's some news for me. Wow.
Yeah, you hadn't heard that. Yes,
I had not heard that. I had not heard that. That's brand spanking.
He's been sick for a while, Dave.
Yeah. So.
Well, he looked sick a long while ago, but that's too bad. That's too bad.
So basically, the topic of tonight, we're doing a little tribute show to Mr. Daniel Bryan because of his very recent retirement. We're all kind of, I don't know if I want to say shocked, but really just, I don't know, just really disappointed, I guess, like really just upset. It's never a good thing when somebody young like that has to give up what they love to do. So,
Yeah, I've never prayed so hard for a swerve.
oh my God, yeah, I know. Like so many things were running through my mind. Like, and I heard so many ideas. I'm like, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. But obviously, it was legit, and we'll see. Dave, you were actually there.
Yep.
That night at Raw, so you got to witness the whole thing firsthand. Why don't you run down that experience for us? Just being there. How was
Sure.
that?
Yeah, no, I was there on Monday night, the Key Arena in Seattle. It was a great night of Raw. I took my brother Sam, who's 12. It was his very first WWE show, so that was fun. It was funny too because my first show live was also when I was 12, also at Raw back in '97. So that was a cool experience to be able to do that. But yeah, the whole reason why everybody was there, nobody in that building, first and foremost, cared about any of the other matches going on. Everybody was there to see Daniel Bryan, who's an Aberdeen native, not far from Seattle, hometown kid, show up and have his announcement. And just like you guys were saying, I think everybody in the crowd was hoping that there was some sort of storyline, that there was going to be a swerve, that like just anything but what ended up happening. And I mean, that might have been one of the loudest crowds I'd ever been around. Everybody was doing the yes chant when he came out, and when he had to announce his retirement, there really at that point wasn't a dry in the house. Everybody was sad and chanting, and please don't go. And obviously when he hit his emotional points, like talking about the last time his dad saw him wrestle in the Key Arena, before WrestleMania 30, when they had the takeover at Raw, which set up the match at WrestleMania. It was just a really emotional night. And the funny thing was, to me, as I'm watching all the matches through the show, it felt like everybody was sitting on their hands or like keeping their energy for when Daniel Bryan came out. They were like, honestly, like nobody else cared. I think beyond the Owens Ziggler match, no one cared about any of the other. Like nobody cared about the Dudley Boy turn on the Usos at the end of the show. Like nobody during the tables match, nobody cared. It was all about Daniel Bryan. It was a really emotional night. It was a great retirement speech. It was just, you knew you were sitting on it, in a historical moment, and you were just trying to appreciate it. And everybody in the crowd was appreciating it. Only one guy that I know of got the chance to try to even ruin it with, the na 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 chant that people like to do.
Yeah.
And he immediately got escorted out by security, so that took care of, that whole deal. But it was just a really special. It was just a really special night, and I was happy to be there. I've been really I have to say I've been pretty lucky as a wrestling fan. I was there for Edge's last match at WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. Nobody knew at the time. It was 2 weeks later that he announced his retirement, but I was lucky enough to see that, and that was pretty cool. And to be there in front of, to be among his hometown crowd and to be there for that announcement was pretty emotional. It was really cool after I guess Raw went off the air when the entire roster came out on the stage, as they normally do for when most people retire, to give their final round of applause. And also Brie came out, his wife, and they hugged it out, and it was kind of like a storybook ending, really. And obviously it's really sad that he had to retire, but at the same time it was about as good of an ending as you could possibly have for a guy who's had a really long, really successful career. Yeah,
you're either really lucky, Dave, or you're just a curse to the WWE.
That could be both. It could be both, really. It could be.
Yeah, no, man, it sounds like an amazing experience. I mean, it was amazing to watch on TV. I can't even imagine it live. I totally agree with what you're saying, though, and I get that because I was kind of doing the same thing while watching Raw, where I was like, I was kind of like all that was on my mind was Daniel Bryan. Like I had no interest in any of the matches, and it was a good move on WWE to make people kind of sit through all 3+ hours actually. At like 10 of 11, I was like, this sucks. They're only going to give him 10 minutes, and then it went to like 11:30. So
right.
It was man, what a speech though. What a speech.
I got misty.
Yeah. I started to get a little choked up, not gonna lie, like a little bit, like at some of the parts that Dave highlighted here. Like when he started talking with his dad, I was like, oh boy. Like you get that feeling like in your throat.
And it's not even so much that it's sad that he's had so many concussions that he can't do it anymore. I was more sad for like the stuff that we're never gonna see.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna see him versus Nakamura. We're not gonna see him versus Hideo Itami. I wanted to see that match so bad. Just the matches that we're not going to see with him not being around anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like that was the talk. Like Nakamura was like definitely, they were kind of tweeting at each other, so like that was definitely a match that people were excited to see, under the lights of WWE. So, I don't know, man, it's just such a sad moment. So before we get more into this, I just wanted to make this little announcement that in a few minutes, surprise guest will be coming on.
Really?
Yes, Mr. Ray Lloyd, you know him as WCW's Glacier. He's going to chime in on this Daniel Bryan retirement thing. Ray's been on the show before. We did a really great interview with him, and we just did a survey that's out on smartandmark.com. So there's a survey there. Fans can go fill it out, check out this project that Ray wants to get off the ground. And this is basically just some data collection for him to see what fans really want.
And it's a real quick survey, guys.
It's really quick, yeah.
It's 5 questions.
Yeah.
So.
And it definitely has options for like write-ins too if you guys want like some specific stuff. Basically just dealing with like the industry, and Ray's been around a long time, so he knows he knows his way around the biz, so he can kind of talk about in-ring performance and booking and all kinds of stuff, like all the ins and outs. So he's going to be it's going to be a really cool project for him. And so we're going to get Ray on in just a few minutes. He's going to call in a few minutes, and we'll ask him a couple questions about the Daniel Bryan retirement situation. So, but anyway, just wanted to shout that out there in case he calls and we're right in the middle of something. So, Dave, what did your brother think of his first Raw appearance there? Especially did he understand like how big of a deal it was the Daniel Bryan thing?
I think near the end, he was kind of picking up on it. He's not a regular watcher of Raw. I mean, he likes wrestling when it's on, and he's not obviously as well versed as his older brother is in the ins and outs and all of that. But he was definitely like right there with the crowd and doing the yes chants, and it was funny because during the Divas match, he there was a chant for "We want Sasha," like "We want Sasha, we want Sasha" for Sasha Banks, and that was actually the loudest chant that my brother did the entire night. he wanted to see Sasha Banks, so that was pretty
loud with Sasha in Boston when I went to Raw. So
yeah,
it was loud.
It was pretty awesome, but no, he just really had a great time. It's funny because I think it was more emotional for me than it was for him. It was just the funny thing about it was like I mentioned earlier, he's 12 and it was his first Raw, and first WWE live show ever. I was 12, my first WWE show, and it was Raw. And the funny thing that I thought about earlier today that I didn't even realize was my first show, which was in Portland, Maine at the Cumberland County Civic Center, and I got a T-shirt. I got Stone Cold Steve Austin T-shirt, Austin 316, the classic Austin 316 T-shirt, and a toy WWE belt, championship belt.
Nice.
And I took Sam to the merchandise table, and I asked him what he wanted. And sure enough, he wanted, of all the T-shirts that they had, he wanted a Ryback T-shirt. He wanted the Feed Me More T-shirt and a WWE toy belt. Toy championship belt. So it was so funny and so just like I don't know if he'll ever like it as much as I do, but just to be able to have kind of that same experience is and be able to bond like that, that was pretty cool overall. But he definitely enjoyed himself. He had a great time. He definitely wants to do it again. So I think he's hooked. I think he does like it. But yeah, he wasn't like I'm not 100% sure if he understood it as much as everybody else, but I think he was definitely into it. He was definitely into the the yes chants and please don't go and all of that stuff. So he had a great time. He had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got a Stone Cold shirt and a toy belt. He got a Ryback shirt and a toy belt. You didn't, chastise him for liking crappy wrestlers.
Yeah, didn't steer him away from the Ryback.
Maybe to a Dean Ambrose shirt or.
I tried 3 different times. I asked him 3 different times if he wanted a John Cena shirt. I really did. I was just like, "Are you sure you don't want
Kevin Owens shirt, maybe?"
He's like, "No, I really want the Ryback T-shirt." I'm like, "Really? You don't want the there's a Kevin Owens one right there, or a Triple H one right there, or like even the Uso one. You don't want the Uso shirt? You want Ryback?" He's like, "Yeah, I want Ryback." I'm like, "All right."
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It was hard. It was hard to do, but and get him what he wants, I guess.
He's a work in progress, man. It'll be fine.
That's right. He's right. We're still getting him. It's still the beginning stages. Hopefully, we'll get him into that funk.
What do you think of the Ryback's new gear?
I think he desperately wants to look like Goldberg. I think there was Goldberg chants all throughout the arena the second that he walked out in the new gear.
Yeah.
It was basically welcoming, those Goldberg chants that he allegedly hates so much. So that was funny to me.
Yeah. So I saw like one of your, I think it was a Facebook post or a tweet from you that night, and you said that the arena's pretty small. How I mean, did it make it feel kind of like larger than life with all that going on because the venue's so small? Did it just make it? Do you think that the crowd was like obviously just crazy anyway, or do you think that the size of the venue was kind of made it amplify a little bit more? What's that venue like? Is it cool? Is it a fun place?
It's a fun place. It's funny because the Key Arena I think might actually even be smaller than the TD Garden in Boston.
Oh wow!
And that really it's been a for people who don't know anything about Seattle used to be the home of the Key Arena used to be the home of Seattle Supersonics, who are now the Oklahoma City Thunder, and moved out of town a good few years ago now. And one of the problems within the city is that the Key Arena is too small, and they're trying to get a new arena built not far from CenturyLink Field downtown, where Seattle Seahawks play. And once that new arena is built, that'll be the arena of the city. The NBA is expected to come back at some point after that, and along with that, actually, I think an NHL team. I think the NHL is interested in moving a team up here as well. So it's kind of one of the prevailing sports questions here in Seattle. But no, but what makes it great though is in a small barn like that is that one, noise picks up more anyway, and I mean, regardless of the size of the building, the roof went off the building when Daniel Bryan came out. Period. That would have been loud anywhere. But yeah, definitely for some some chance that may not have picked up as much steam in a place like TD Garden or Madison Square Garden or a bigger arena like that picks up a little bit better in a place like Key Arena. But that's what made it great. Honestly, I love it when a show can happen in a smaller arena like that. It makes it more intimate, especially, I mean, if Daniel Bryan did this at a WrestleMania, like let's say this happened at like WrestleMania, which no retirement announcement I don't think would ever happen at a WrestleMania, outside of Ric Flair's last match or Shawn Michaels' last match. But if it was an outdoor arena, I don't think it would have carried the life or had the effect that having it in a small arena like that did. So, and it was just great because in the retirement speech, Daniel Bryan immediately went the Mick Foley cheap pop route by starting to talk about the things that he loves, and of course the first thing that he brings up is the Seattle Seahawks, and everybody goes nuts the second that he says Seattle Seahawks, starts Seahawk chant.
Yeah,
which I did not take a part in, and
good for you.
yeah, no, not at all, and but no, it was just great. It was just great. It's a great experience. It was my second time in there. I was there for a comedy show on New Year's Eve with Amy Schumer. So I already knew what I was gonna kind of experience with the building. But no, it was great. It made it better. It really did. If that was at a bigger arena or an outdoor stadium, it really wouldn't have been as great of a night as it was. It just made it better.
I was actually thinking about that earlier about what would have happened if they would have put that on a pay-per-view for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I didn't think it was a good idea, but I wasn't thinking that it was a terrible idea. I don't know why. I mean, obviously everything works out perfectly because it's in Daniel Bryan's hometown and all this stuff, and and that's just where it should have been. But for some reason I was like, man, this is such a huge deal that I could see them doing it on a pay-per-view. But it's just it was long, and it was it would have eaten up a chunk of time. But I felt like it was that important, to not just be kind of thrown on a Raw. But I don't know. It made a really great Raw moment, which I really feel like they're lacking nowadays.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I mean, yeah, you look back and they have all these anthologies of the best Raw moments, and none of them are really from any time recent. So, and this I think will definitely go down as one of those amazing Raw moments. I mean, the speech itself I thought was really great. Him getting a little choked up and a little emotional, was obviously, I mean, it choked me up.
Dave, how many grown men did you see crying?
Right, exactly.
There was a good number of them. There's a good number of them. What I think appreciated the most about the speech was there was no wasted words. You know what I mean? There's no waste. Every word that he said had meaning, and I know no time was wasted at all during the speech. Everything made a point. Even he talked about being grateful about this and that and whatever, and that can get sometimes when people go back to that point, it can get grating after a number of times of saying it. But every single thing that he was grateful for carried weight when he spoke, and I think that's what made it great. I think he's always been a good speaker, but this was really one of it truly came from the heart. You could tell that everything that he was saying, he truly believed in, and there was nothing fake. There was nothing fake at all in what he said, and I think that's what made everybody so emotional. People in the crowd felt that, and that's what made everybody. It just hit everybody, and I think that's why we as a crowd were so emotional about it. You can tell. I mean, I think you've always been able to tell in his work, but this is a time when he was really able to express, his true love for the business and what he did, verbally. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was a great speech. I enjoyed the speech, big time. So
was anybody else a little when he did the swerve? He's like, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I won't be a wrestler.
Yeah,
but not tonight. And I was like, was he gonna fight somebody?
My wife said the same thing. My wife was like, does that mean he's gonna fight tonight? And I was like, no. Like the show is like 30 minutes past like when it was supposed to be over, so no. And of course not. Like that wouldn't make any sense. He just said that he has like lesions on his brain. Like that's insane. So no. But yes, that glimmer of like not even hope, because that would be really selfish, but like a weird like thing. I was like, no way, what? This is the biggest swerve ever. So
but one more kick to Triple H would have been nice though. If Triple H is gonna come down with a belt and something stupid and then got a kick to the face, I would have been okay with that.
Yeah. Anyway, so we just got so Ray Lloyd is just joined us. Ray, thanks for calling in, man. I really appreciate the time tonight.
Oh yeah, John, thank you for having me, man.
Anytime, man. We gave you some big shout outs earlier before you came on. So yeah, no, we did the we plugged the survey and everything. So so again, thanks for letting us kind of take part in that. And thanks for coming on. We really wanted to get your take on obviously the whole Daniel Bryan thing. It's blowing up. It's a big thing in the world of wrestling. Probably the biggest thing that's happened in a while. So and I just reached out to you because you've been on the show before, and you get that kind of like insider kind of view on it. So I wanted to see if your thoughts and if you guys have ever crossed paths or anything like that. So what can you tell me from your perspective?
Once again, thanks for having me on. I think you guys have such a great show. My hat's off to the guy. I mean, like everyone else that has ever watched him perform or whatever. I mean, you can't. I don't know if you can find a critic of Daniel Bryan anywhere on this planet. I'd like to see him.
Yeah.
But no, personally, we really have never really gotten to know each other. A lot of the guys that I'm close to, that have gotten to know him and work with him, like Dallas. Dallas is they've done some stuff together and people like that. But I haven't had a chance to watch. I recorded it, but I still have not had a chance to sit down and watch it. I want to make sure I had some time to kind of just sit down uninterrupted and watch it. But just from listening to what you guys were saying, it seemed like it was a very heartfelt speech that he gave at the end. And and if this is in fact in for him, then my hat's off to him. I think he's doing a smart thing because wrestling is if you're in the wrestling business, it's something that most people who get in the wrestling business, it's their passion. It's something they've been wanting to do for a long time, if not for their whole lives for an awful long time. And to get a chance to do it on the biggest stage in the world is there's that 1% that gets to do that, and he's in that 1%. And let's face it, with WrestleMania in New Orleans, I don't know if anyone in pro wrestling history has ever had that kind of a night, so in my opinion, if you're gonna say that's it, then great, because you couldn't. There's not really anything. If you wrestle for 5-10 more years, I don't know if you could ever do anything to top that anyway. He's just everything you hear about the guy, everything I hear about him is he's a class act. Excuse me, unbelievable work ethic. He's everything that it takes to have a chance to be successful in this business. And I hope I get a chance to meet up with him one of these days and sit down and talk shop with him. He's somebody who represents the pro wrestling business very well, and that says an awful lot right there.
Yeah, so his whole reasoning, I think the reasoning for it kind of took us all by surprise, because we were kind of all thinking that it was from his neck injury. And then he kind of comes out with this concussion stuff, which wasn't really previously mentioned. And obviously in this country, concussions are like, it's like the hot new thing. There's obviously been extreme advancements in, early recognition of concussions and, in trying to prevent them and all this stuff.
Well, it's not just here. They're doing it in soccer now. They're limiting kids. They're saying kids can't head the ball in soccer
anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not even just in wrestling, but I mean, like football, soccer. Yeah.
Ray, do you think there's anything that can be done in wrestling to help cut down on the concussions? I know like Neville, you see Neville wear a mouth guard, and I know some people think that mouth guards, can really help out with the concussions. Do you think there's anything like that they should, be mandating or?
I think they've done some good things up till now. Like eliminate chair shots and things like that. Obviously, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out you should be doing that. But I think the mouthpiece thing. I mean, Kurt Angle did it for a while, even though I think it was more of a just part of his gimmick. But I think back then he was going through some next stuff too, so it probably was functional as well as just part of his presentation. But yeah, it's I think there's some things that when you watch I watched a few episodes of Toughen Up, they were showing the people training, with the headgear on, things like that. So I think it seems like WWE is doing everything they can, but at the end of the day, it's just, even if you're taking the bumps the correct way, which obviously if you get to that point, most of the time you are, you're doing something the body just was not designed to do. And that is that you're crashing into things and you're slamming your body into, to the canvas. And one of the first things you learn in any wrestling school, any credible wrestling school, is how to tuck your chin so your head's not bouncing off the canvas. But then again, it doesn't, over time, being in the a lot of people don't know I have a master's degree in health and fitness, so I've studied a lot of this extensively outside of wrestling, and it doesn't even matter. I mean, your head doesn't have to bounce off the canvas to still have enough head trauma, just from your whole body being
just from the start
down
stop
and over and into things. I think 20 years from now we're going to have a lot more evidence on what the body can take and what it can't take. But I'll be the first to tell you, I was the first one for a long time to dismiss it. I was like, me and one of my very, very best friends, Luther Wilson, who wrestled in WCW, went to the power plant and wrestled with Luther Biggs. We used to joke about it all the time about, when we can't remember stuff, and I was just talking to him earlier tonight, and we were talking about the fact that things we can't remember now, and we just jokingly call it, we always say years of the head trauma. That's just like our go-to line, But as we get older, we don't laugh there as much, because we start to realize that it could be something very serious. And so for Daniel Bryan to come out and say that, and I didn't know he said that. I obviously have been kind of just crazy scheduled this week. I haven't even had a chance to sit down and read anything about it hardly. I tried to watch it and I just wasn't able to get it. I had something that came up where I had to just record it that night. And but yeah, it's a very real thing, and not to touch on anything that's really grim, and not to get off the subject too much, but Chris Benoit, I knew very well. Chris had several documented concussions, and the thing that I always go back to is how many concussions did he have that were not documented? And that's maybe what someone like Daniel Bryan is thinking, is like, okay, I know I've been through 15, around 15 hard years, and he's always wrestled a style where it was probably harder and more impactful than most guys. So he's I think he's making a very, very smart move, if that is the reason. And I talked to John about this earlier. If in fact he is really retiring, which if they're going to go through all this, I certainly hope he really is retiring. But you have to remember, this is WWE. Okay, so there's always that chance that it may not be the end. But if they're going to go through all this, and I do believe from what you guys are saying, being that it's such a heartfelt, and I've seen some posts on Facebook, it seemed like it was very heartfelt speech. moment, it is the end. But knowing WWE and knowing the pro wrestling business, there's always that chance of getting lured back into it too. So, and I hope that if he has these issues that he's really addressing, I hope that this is it, and he can sign off and go out and basically on top, really. But it is a wrestling business, just like any. And I'll tell you the hardest thing in the world for a professional athlete is to be able to look in the mirror and say it's over. And I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of guys that I've talked to, and I've asked them this question because it was asked to me by someone I really respected years ago. And he said, if I could tell you you have one more year, but this is what it's going to cost you, would you still do it? And I can tell you there's been several times when the issue of this is what it's going to cost you was different and pretty impactful, and almost every single time everyone I ever talked to said, yes, I'd take it. So that's a little, it's hard to walk away, very, very hard to walk away, especially when you're at that top level of whatever it is. So yeah, I know he's facing a very, very tough time in his life, and if this is what he's decided to do, then I certainly hope that he sticks to his decision, because for to have the best quality of life he can have from here on out, and he's a young man. I mean, for God's sake, he's doing the responsible thing right now, and I certainly hope that's that if it is final, then that's it, and he can. He's still going to have his hand in the rest of the business for the rest of his life. We all know that. I mean, he's just that kind of guy. But it's a part of his career that means whatever he does in the ring is over. Then okay, and then just we all accept that and say, okay, well, we still want to see him, and I'm sure we will in some capacity still.
Yeah, he's definitely been doing stuff. Even during his injury when he was out, he was he did like the Tough Enough. He was like Tough Enough Judge.
Yep.
So he's done stuff with the company, and I don't know what his. You would obviously know. You'd kind of be the expert to go to on this, Ray. Would be like how like contracts work and stuff for those guys. I don't know if they have like performance, like in-ring contracts, or if stuff is going to change for him, if he's going to do.
Well, from what I understand, he gets paid his downside no matter what.
Yeah. Okay.
While he was injured.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, if he like officially retires from in-ring, like, I'm sure that they're going to restructure or something. And and kind of going back to what you said, Ray, like, we kind of all are like, is this really the it or the end? I would almost feel a little cheated if in a month or two, because he's like retired from WWE and if his contract ends with them, if you see him like pop up in like Ring of Honor or something, like I would feel a little cheated because of how in depth that speech was and really how emotional it was. And I was like, man, like, it was so believable.
There's no way Vince doesn't have a no compete clause in that contract.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. And, so yeah.
And like I said, and not to be the devil's advocate here, but because like I said, I have nothing but good things to say about Daniel Bryan. I mean, and I mean that sincerely. But all you have to do is look back to WrestleMania in Orlando, Florida, with Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. I mean, I saw Ric Flair in the ring, with tears in his eyes, and everybody said that's it.
Yeah.
And all that. And let's face it, I mean, gave him the biggest send-off you could possibly ever imagine. And laughed too long.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying this is the same thing now, but I'm saying this is the pro wrestling business. Just understand that there's very, very few things in the wrestling business are etched in concrete. And I will tell you that there's a saying that Vince McMahon has that says, "Show me the stone." And what he means by that is, show me where it's etched in stone that this has to be this way.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Makes sense. Picking it up loud and clear. Makes sense.
Ray, what do you think about the WWE? They've kind of been portrayed as, they were portrayed as the bad guy in this for a while, and now people are kind of applauding them for not letting Daniel Bryan compete. When they thought that this might be a problem, with his multiple concussions. But then at the same time, they bring back somebody like Tommy Dreamer, who can't remember what he had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah, and I love Tommy.
And he said so. He said his wife, will look at him and say, "You just asked me that," and he's talked about how he, has memory loss, depression, dementia. You know, he's going through some problems now, and they just brought him back a couple months ago and had him wrestling in the ring, and that guy's had more concussions than anybody.
I know, and it's scary. I mean, and I'll tell you guys, I think about it all the time. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's. My mom has dementia right now. I'm really scared about what the next 20 years is going to hold for me. But and like I said, I just saw Tommy recently, and I love Tommy, but I have the same issue. Like I have, friends that I ask them the same questions over and over, and they used to laugh it off, but now they're kind of like, hey, do you realize you're asking the same thing over and over? And here's my thing with the WWE, and this is just me standing on the outside looking in. It's just my opinion. And for the record, I have no ill will towards the WWE at all. They were the first one to remind me years ago that the history is written by the winners. I think I said that I was on your show last time. And so WWE is going to write the history the way they want to write it, which is fine. And there's some people with WWE that love to poke fun at the whole glacier gimmick, and that's fine too. Have at it. My point is, I've been this gimmick for 20 years and had a lot of success with it. So there's going to be the ups and the downs with it. But I think, and this is just me personally, I think that Triple H is definitely seeing the future of the wrestling business, just like all other sports, and the fact that you are going to have to address these issues. And if you don't address them, then there's going to be hell to pay for that. So whether they want to or not, I think that they're doing just like the NFL is doing, and especially the NFL is instead of fighting, they're embracing it and saying, look at what we're doing. Look what we're doing. Look what we're doing to do. And whether it's for the right reasons or not, at least they're doing it. And that's where. But I just say to anybody, and anybody who's listening, who's an up-and-coming wrestler or an aspiring wrestler, just understand. And I think I said this on the show before. What you're looking to get into, pro wrestling is not a contact sport. And I always call it a sport because everybody I know that gets into wrestling, they're competitors. When we go out there, we compete. We're all trying to have the best match on the card. So in that sense, it is a sport. It is a competition. And when we go out there, and you put your body through that, it's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. You're crashing into each other. And we weren't really meant to do that, especially not with any kind of protection as far as your head or shoulders or, on your knees, maybe some knee pads, maybe a knee brace, if you already have a bad knee. So, it's just something the body wasn't meant to do. So there's got to be repercussions from that, and just like with football or whatever. So yeah, there's going to have to be some changes made, and but just understand if this is what you choose to do, there's a very good chance that you're going to have some long-term effects from it, and that's just, and most people are willing to trade that, especially in youth, because in youth that's tomorrow, and but that's just, so no matter how much I say or anybody else says it, people who get into it are going to keep getting into it, and that's great, but just understand that there may be some consequences to pay 20, 30 years down the road. But yeah, I hope they do more for the concussion thing, because once again, Luther and I were just talking about this recently. He's gone to 2 doctors about his he had ringing in his ears, he had neck issues, and he was one of the very proud few that ever made it through the power plant tryout. It was only about 10% of all the people that went through those made it. And he's had doctors tell him, well, he's going to see stars. That's pretty much considered a concussion. He was like, my God, that was like almost every day.
Yeah.
There's still, the thing about it is, we're still in the infant stages really learning all about all that stuff. So yeah, I hope they continue to do everything they can. I hope they keep, just be proactive, because, it's only going to help the people in the ring, the guys and the girls that are in the ring.
Yeah.
Ray, I actually have a question, Ray. It involves today's generation of wrestlers. You come from a generation of guys who truly, like, no matter what injury you had, or if you had a back in those days, be more thought of as a stinger or seeing stars, to just go out there and and work the next night regardless of whatever injury there is. I know that Daniel Bryan had a follow-up interview last night on SportsCenter with Jonathan Coachman, and the biggest thing that he was getting across was, that self-reporting concussions is the biggest thing that you yourself, as an athlete, can, to help yourself is the best thing that you can do is self-report these, when you think you have a concussion. Do you see, I know you've been able to see, some of today's newer wrestlers, or in meetings, some of these guys here and there, do you see a change in that thought process at all from your days, back in your time in WCW to today's? Is there kind of a change in thought process that you see at all that these guys might be able to do that? Or is there, it's such a hard thing with wrestling. It goes back to, either your days playing like high school football or sports and wrestling. They're all kind of interconnected in this, manly man, macho world where you have to just, whatever injuries
tough it out.
Yeah, to go all out. Do you see these guys being able to do that, or do you still kind of see like, well, the times have changed, but some things are still there, including that type of mentality, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the simple answer is I think things have changed a little bit, but I'm not sure because I'm not on the inside. I mean, I know several guys that are with WWE, but that's one of the things like I don't dare ask them, but because I can just tell you, I mean, there's like this, from what I've seen, this sense of fear with anybody that works for WWE that if you talk about anything outside of to anybody outside of that bubble, that they're just so afraid it might get back to somebody that might be misinterpreted. So I don't ask because I don't want any of my friends to get put in a position like that,
Right.
But I can say what I've observed is that when I was in WCW, and that was during that period when wrestling was at its hottest, 96, I signed in January 96, I was still there, even though the last several months I was kind of like on a nightly deal, but I was still there up until the very end. And but I remember getting the call when WCW was sold. I remember when we got bought. I remember pulling into my driveway and literally shutting the car off, and like without even realizing it, this unbelievable load, emotional load, was lifted off of me. Because I felt like for the last 5 years I've been walking around with eggshells. Because if you were hurt, especially if it wasn't something visible, like it wasn't a dislocated arm, shoulder or something where, it's, because, concussion is a very subjective thing, unless you do an MRI or whatever. So, like someone can do, your eye test and stuff like that, but, at least, to people who want to consider subjective, it can be subjective. So, yeah, and I can say without reservation, during the WCW years, the NWO years, is like everybody referred to it, you didn't dare say you were hurt.
Right.
I know I speak for literally everybody being out the talk about it because they didn't have to worry about it. If they were hurt, so be it. They got, if they got a hangnail, they got the night off, But,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I know guys like Benoit, like Eddie Guerrero, like Paige, and when Paige was working up the ladder, all of us, like you just didn't dare say that you even thought you had a concussion.
Yeah.
You just didn't, and now on the surface it appears that that's different. It seems like that they're really, preaching, and that may be the wrong word, but they're really, I guess, advocating, hey, if you're hurt, let us know, and if you think you may be hurt. And of course now they're doing the concussion testing, so that's going to help some too. So yeah, it's definitely a different time, but I can tell you, I mean, that wasn't that long ago, and it was two things, it was two factors. One, if you thought you were hurt, you didn't dare say anything for the fear of, one, not being taken seriously, and two, not really being able to prove it. And the other thing, that this is one factor most people don't think about. I'm telling you, and I didn't realize this until someone very close to me in the wrestling business explained this to me. But when you're in the professional wrestling industry, there perpetuate this myth that you're indestructible because you're supposed to go out there night after night and not really show the effects of the beating you took the night before or the night before that, unless it's in whatever angle you're in. So you could go out there and get the hell beat out of you I'm not accusing anybody or anything, but I'm saying this is the professional wrestling business, and it's one of the most ruthless, underhanded businesses there is. So to think that everything's on the up and up, and we're going, hey, we're getting way ahead of this thing, and we're going to take care of it. I hope so, but I'm not completely convinced of that just yet.
Yeah,
sure.
But it's a very real problem in all sports. And I can tell you honestly, where it became very real to me, and I meant to say this earlier, but I kind of ended up getting off the course on this, is I went to see the movie Concussion, which I recommend to any person who has any interest in athletics, whether as an active participant or if you have a child that's looking to play whatever. And I'm not saying, I love football, so I'm not saying, oh, stop playing football. But Mike Webster was a big hero of mine growing up. Still was. But Mike Webster was the All-Pro center, played on all four of the Super Bowl teams for the Steelers. I mean, he was the first really superstar offensive lineman. And the first 20 minutes of this movie show how he got reduced to someone who was he's a Hall of Fame center. I mean, he's considered one of the greatest offensive linemen that ever played the game. And he gets reduced to being homeless, living out of his truck, and gluing his teeth back in with super glue and tasing himself,
Oh, man.
And I'm telling you, like, I was with, a date. I've shed tears in a movie before, and I'm not ashamed to say that. This is the first movie I've openly cried to the point where I had to get up and leave.
Oh my God! Wow.
I saw myself becoming that, and that may be a little extreme, but when you've gone through this business for 70 years, in April it will be 29 years for me, and I've been in very active 29 years. I've never taken a year off where I haven't wrestled. So it really hit home with me that I don't ever foresee myself ending up homeless like that, but that wasn't that long ago that this happened. I mean, this was only in the early 90s when this happened. He was 50 years old, and he looked like he was 70, and he was, so I look at that and I go, my God, I mean, what do we not know about this yet? And so if that's the reason why Daniel Bryan, not to get away from all that, really just kind of come back around that, if that's the main reason why he decided to step away, that I applaud it, because not only is he making a great decision for himself, but he's bringing a lot of publicity to something that needs more publicity. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, totally. And I didn't even think about that. That's a great point. Somebody as big of a star as Daniel Bryan bringing up the concussion thing puts a lot of eyes on it, and then especially with ESPN picking up wrestling, and I know that they're definitely focused more on WWE than pro wrestling as a whole. But it definitely gets more eyes on it. Ray, just one more question for you. Sorry to keep you so long, man. I appreciate the time again. So kind of sticking on more of it doesn't really necessarily have to be concussion based, but I know that you've been a teacher and a coach inside and outside of wrestling. I know that you've worked with kids a lot in your life. How do you kind of find that happy medium of, teaching young athletes, mainly kids, to still being tough, but also being responsible, like with their bodies and like reporting injuries because I know personally from my own personal thing, like it was always tough it out. My dad was always like my football coach. He has this famous like quote in our household. If I was hurt, he would always, which doesn't even make sense, but he would say tape and aspirin to it, which doesn't even make sense. But so I definitely, so I feel like times are definitely changing. So from your perspective, you being like working with kids in the past, how do you kind of convey that to, still being tough, but also be responsible?
Yeah. And I've actually, I've spoken to recreational football teams and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, I went back to someone who was a mentor of mine that I respected, and I asked him basically the same thing. I said, how do you train these young athletes and stuff like that? And he had 3 sons who were like great athletes. That he had 4 children. His daughter was a great athlete too. 3 sons all played football. And I said to him, how did you handle this? And because his kids were all hard heads. They would just they hit a wall if you told them to. And but this guy's someone who I very much respect, who trains a lot of pro football players for the NFL combines. And he said something to me one time that just made a lot of sense. He said, play with your head, but don't lead with your head. And like play hard, play intense, but don't lead with your head. Don't. You're not trying to be a missile. You're not trying to like knock somebody out by knocking yourself out. And that always really resonated with me. Is play hard, go full speed, but just don't lead with your head. Don't put your head down and become a missile, because nothing about that ends well for anybody. And then if you go back and you watch so many of the injuries, like in football, really in wrestling, things like that, a lot of times that's what happens. People, they shot straight in, with their head at a certain level, and that's bad things happen. So, yeah, the nature of the game has changed so much. Like I was recently watching some wrestling, and I gotta be honest with you, like I feel so bad for the wrestling fan that a lot of the style of wrestling has changed over the years. But I think maybe some of that is, especially in WWE, is due to the fact that they are trying to make it safer by the way they're doing certain things. And you look at it. I mean, look at the guys whose career were ended in the wrestling business just on really not what you consider high risk maneuvers. I mean, there's the guys like Droz who did have kind of a high risk maneuver and who was paralyzed. But you look at Ricky Steamboat. I mean, most people don't realize Ricky Steamboat was just basically pulled off the rope by Steve Austin and just landed on his tailbone wrong. Arn Anderson, I think was doing a sunset flip and somehow landed wrong. And just messed up the left side of his body. I mean, so it can happen doing basic things, which is why it's so important to get trained properly in the pro wrestling business. Which so many pro wrestling schools out there are not authorized to be training anybody. But yeah, it's being smart. It's being smart and not doing the things that used to be celebrated. Like I'm sorry, even when I was coming through high school, I mean, if you did what we call a kamikaze hit, the coaches went nuts for that. But some kids have been paralyzed.
Yeah.
So times have changed, hopefully for the better. But that's what I always remember is play with your head, but don't lead with your head. Don't do something that you just know your body cannot absorb.
Yeah.
You can't just run. You can't lower your head and run into things. And unfortunately, like I said, wasn't that long ago. That was kind of being taught. That was kind of being taught to do that. So yeah. And with pro football, I hear the critics say, "Oh, football's changed so much because of the rules. And you can't do this and do that." But listen, these guys are. It's just like in pro wrestling. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster. And when you get that combination, then you're going to have more power, banging into more power, and that happens. Something's got to give at some point.
Yeah.
So I'd rather it be your shoulder than your neck.
Yeah, totally.
Ray, I got one more question about concussions, if you don't mind. It's kind of a personal question. You can answer it if you don't. Have you given any thought, given your long career and such, to donating your brain to any of these, the Legacy Foundation, the Concussion Legacy Foundation, or do you know of anybody that is planning to help further the research?
It's really, really funny you say that, because I was just discussing that. And it's funny how much this comes up in conversation with people that are, associates of mine in the wrestling business. But yeah, I definitely plan on doing that, because it's just been, like I said, it's just been recently that, and some of it maybe just be getting old. I mean, like I said, I'll be 52 in May. So, who knows? I may just be becoming an old man. But yeah, I definitely, I want to do that, because I think if there's, it's not going to do me any good, once I kick the bucket. So if there's something that can be learned from it, then by all means. Yeah, and I hope a lot of other people do the same, because, I think there's a lot more to be learned. I think that there's a lot of damage that's been done that's yet to be revealed. Like I said, not to name drop at all, but Jim McMahon's a good friend of mine. And, of course, McMahon was one of the guys that spearheaded the whole, concussion thing with the NFL, the lawsuit with them. And, and I look at Jim and I see him, a couple times a year when we get together, and I see a different person than I saw even 3 or 4 years ago, and I know what he's dealing with. And, guys like Steve McMichael and those guys who are starting to come out and say, this is a very real thing. And Mongo, I think the world of Mongo, and I always thank him every time I see him for not killing me when we wrestled each other. topic of discussion among people in the wrestling business that are on the that are on the back end side of their career, because it used to never be talked about, but now it is, and I'm glad it's okay to talk about now, because it used to not be. And then we see the old veterans at the the wrestling shows and the fan fest, and it's easy to see the ones who are having trouble. It really is, and it's sad. And so I mean, I won't. In 20 years, I want to see fewer people like that, not more. So I hope we get a chance to. I hope WWE does as much as they seem like they're willing to do, and I really hope that's the case. But I really, I just see like Stephanie seems to have done with like Special Olympics and all these other charities and things that they're bringing to life. I think they are serious about it for whatever reason. I don't really care what the reason is, as long as they're doing it. So yeah, and I think Daniel Bryan will be someone over the next several years that will be, a tremendous goodwill ambassador for the pro wrestling business. And look at, obviously we all know the coach, was in WWE before, but still, for Daniel Bryan to go on, the number one sports channel in the world, I mean, there's not even a close second, ESPN, and be able to talk about that, it says a lot about his position in this business. To be able to come on that show and get that kind of airtime to talk about it is pretty significant, pretty impressive in its own right. So obviously he has a great story. He has a big enough following where people will listen. So I wish him well. I look forward to meeting him, here hopefully sometime in the near future, and shaking his hand and thanking him for what he did for the wrestling business. And and as John and I were talking about earlier, anyone who's listening, just real briefly, I just want to touch on this. Anybody who's listening, that wants to be a wrestler, who's trying to become a wrestler, or is a wrestler, but just trying to fight their way, to chasing a dream, is if there's anything that you take from Daniel Bryan's stories, go back and follow his story, read his book, and realize that the reason he made it to that level was not any one thing. It wasn't that he was a great in-ring talent. It wasn't that he had was a great looking baby face. It wasn't that he was a tremendous athlete. It was all those things combined, yes, but the main thing was he had an unbelievable work ethic. And he was going to work as hard as he needed to work to make it to the top. And I can honestly say, if he'd have come along in the 80s, he might not have got the opportunity that he got, at this point in our business. But, there's something to be said about timing. And in the pro wrestling business, timing is a very vital part of anybody making it in the wrestling business. But just understand, here's a guy who wasn't supposed to make it. He was not tall enough, not big enough, didn't have a certain look. He was everything that supposedly you're not supposed to be to make it in wrestling, but he did. And the reason he did, the main reason he did, is his work ethic. The guy refused to be outworked, just like Dallas Page. Dallas Page refused to be outworked. So there's that common element. So for anybody who's chasing this dream of professional wrestling, if you want to model what Daniel Bryan did to get to where he is, it's not so much his talent, not so much his ability, not so much his look, it's his work ethic. That's what will get you give you the greatest possible chance of making it. It doesn't guarantee you, but it will give you put you in the best position, is outwork everybody else. That's the main thing that you did, and that's what he did, and that's why he's at the point where he's at, and he can walk away from the business proudly and say, you know what, I did it on my terms, and I went out on top.
That's a pretty good analogy between Bryan and Dallas. Bryan was too small. Dallas was really too old to be doing it at his age. I mean, he was what, mid-30s when he started, really getting serious? Yeah.
He was 35 when he first decided. And he did it totally backwards. I mean, most people like Freddie Blassie, J.J. Dillon, Bobby Heenan, those guys were all wrestlers, then became managers, and then became commentators, and then went to be managers, whatever. Page was a commentator first, was a manager first, then became a commentator, then became a wrestler.
Listen, he said he was dyslexic, so I believe him. He just started.
Even in his pursuit of his dream, he was dyslexic. But that's two of the things I really recommend to anybody. I know there are a lot of people listening who have that they want to chase some dream, whatever it is, whether it's wrestling or whatever it is you want to chase. I highly recommend reading Page's book, Positively Page, which should tell you that's a great book just in the title or in itself. But also read Daniel Bryan's book, because their stories are parallel in a lot of ways. Because one of the things is that they had a great work ethic and they got a plan, and they worked that plan. And sometimes that still doesn't, that's not going to guarantee you anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Ray, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. And again, to our listeners, you guys can check out the survey that we have out on smartandmark.com regarding Ray's future video blog. So check out that. It's really quick. It's like 5 questions. It's really quick. You know, it won't take any time at all. Go fill it out and get some good data for Ray's future project. So
yeah, Ray,
thank you guys
thanks so much.
I appreciate that. And yeah, anybody listening, please give me your input. Let me know how I need to structure this thing, because I really want to make it something that people that want to listen to it and hopefully want to get some good information from and my opinions on whatever that's worth. So thank you guys again. I really appreciate it. I think you guys have an awesome show, and be honored to come back on anytime you guys will have me.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Door's always open.
All right, guys.
All right, buddy.
Take care.
You too. Thanks. Awesome. Ray Lloyd, ladies and gentlemen, a.k.a. Glacier, WCW's Glacier.
Yeah. Go on and take that survey, because you guys can tell that he really just loves talking wrestling. I mean, we're 2 guys in Podunk, Maine,
right?
You know, talking to him, and he loves talking wrestling. So you know, he's that kind of guy. If you got questions, you could probably tweet at him and he'll answer it. But he really wants to, you know, set up a video blog and answer some, you know, questions about how to get into the business and how to handle yourself and stuff like that. He's just a super nice guy.
Yeah.
And
so I know we kind of went on a little bit tangent there about, you know, concussions and stuff, but it is important, and obviously this is the reason why Daniel Bryan is retiring. But now kind of more towards a little bit more Daniel Bryan tribute stuff. We've got a bunch of, we reached out to Facebook and Twitter and you know, some other social media outlets, and I texted a few people who are big fans. And basically, you know, I asked, like, hey, what's your favorite Daniel Bryan moment, or is there some topic you want to talk about Daniel Bryan? So we'll give a couple shout outs here while we're at it. Let's see, Dustin's son, our good buddy Dustin's son. We all love Dustin. Dustin says, what happened with Daniel Bryan being a member of the Wyatts? Will anyone remember that? Why'd they pull the plug so fast? Do you think Daniel Bryan as a Wyatt member could have worked? Yeah, that was a weird moment. It was like...
He talks about it in his book.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, he wanted it to go longer.
Yeah.
He wanted to be in the Wyatts longer, but stuff happened, and he had to... Like, remember, because he kind of went in, and it was out, like, the next week.
Yeah, it was
very
really quick.
Yeah, he really liked them, and he wanted to do some more stuff with them. It just didn't work out.
Yeah. They have a elite action figure of Daniel Bryan with like the Wyatt jumpsuit, and I always thought that was silly because that lasted like a week.
Yeah,
it was a cool angle, I thought. I believe Bray ended up winning that kind of feud. I think he ended up actually straight up like pinning Daniel Bryan at some pay-per-view to kind of cap it all off. But
yeah, I think Daniel Bryan was part of their crew at it was a Hell in a Cell or something, wasn't it?
It was like a cage match or something.
Yeah.
He got Bray in a cage by himself.
Well, they lost, and then Bray wanted Daniel to take the Sister Abigail.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
To prove his worth or whatever, and
Yeah.
Daniel wouldn't do it, and ended up kicking his ass.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a great moment, and Daniel Bryan was like, it was so hot at the time. So I don't know. I mean, I thought it was a kind of a cool angle, but yeah, it just didn't last very long. So
could Daniel have done crazy? Could he have done crazy? Because I mean, I look at the Wyatt family, and I can almost believe that every member of that group has a bit of craziness to them. But could Bryan have pulled that off? I mean,
he pulled it off.
Obviously.
Hell no.
Yeah.
They're you know, therapy things and stuff. I mean, he was.
Yeah, that was.
Who was it? Amanda? Was it Amanda? Lazy Panda.
Lazy Panda.
Part
of the Smart Mark crew.
She brought up the Daniel Bryan Kane orgasm in the diner video.
Yep.
And it was hilarious.
Yeah,
Daniel Bryan was absolutely out of his mind, screaming.
Yeah, it's a When Harry Met Sally kind of parody. It's fantastic. And then Mae Young at the end says, "I'll have what they're having."
Oh God.
Awesome. God rest her soul.
One of the good parts in his book, it's after he gets fired, the second time. He comes back from Nexus, whatever, and they fire for choking out Justin Roberts with his tie.
Yeah.
Well, Vince calls him up and says, I got to let you go. He says, we can't let that happen. You broke the rules. I'm going to have to let you go. And Daniel Bryan says to him, well, that's great because I'm going to make more money on the indies now anyway.
Nice.
And I guess John Laurinaitis called him up. He's like, did you just tell Vince you're going to make more money on the independents?
What a bold thing to say.
He's like, yeah, I did. He goes, wow.
That's awesome. Oh, my God.
Okay, since that door's just been open, speaking of ridiculous suspensions or firings, can we, for a quick second, I know this is going off topic, can we talk about Titus O'Neil for 3 seconds?
Yeah, let's talk about Titus for 3 seconds.
90-day suspension.
It's now 60.
He got knocked down to 60.
It was apparently been down to 60 now. But, regardless, he's going to miss WrestleMania because of grabbing Vince's arm. Of all the really ridiculous things in the history of the WWE of being suspended, fined, or fired for.
The guy does more charity work than anybody except for probably John Cena.
Yeah.
And it's like they just suspend him for grabbing Vince's arm. You had an interesting take on it, or you read something.
Yeah, I read somewhere today that was Titus was just kind of he was trying to hold Vince back so that Stephanie went first, like ladies first, and he was kind of giving Vince a hard time about it. And Vince just did not like it.
Yeah, Vince pushes him right back. It's really weird.
I saw a really funny meme where it showed Roman Reigns and Titus O'Neil says, grab the boss's arm, get 90 days off, punch the boss in the face, become world champion.
Yeah. They just had The Rock come back and do all that really crazy, weird banter in the back. The guy looked like he was on Molly or something. I was just going berserk.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, and he was just talking. He was being really vulgar with Lana and stuff. Basically not being PG at all. Basically
completely ruined the Big Show's day.
Yeah, throwing all that shit out the window. And I mean, that's completely fine because he's The Rock. But Titus O'Neil, just grabs Vince's arm for some weird reason. I thought it was kind of weird why he did it or whatever. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But it was just a weird situation. I did see one. I don't know who it was. Just some random tweet. Somebody said, well, so much for Black History Month. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the worst.
And it's funny too because earlier in the night they had the Black History Month where they went through all the great WWE African American champions and to have that moment where Titus ends up getting shoved. I mean, way to just get some decent PR out of that by taking the nicest guy on the roster and saying, yeah, you can go home and miss your WrestleMania paycheck for the next, 60 days for grabbing. How dare you grab Vince McMahon's arm? Are you kidding? Oh my God.
That's so silly. Anyway, back to some. No, that's fine.
I think it's off of the rails.
That's fine. Back to Daniel Bryan.
Yes.
Our buddy, Josh, what are we, is he the dashing one? Is Josh the dashing one?
Yes.
Josh Cavazos, yeah, on our site on Smart and Mark.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think he's the dashing one.
The dashing one.
The dashing one. Josh says Daniel Bryan constantly bashing / fighting back against Michael Cole's constant beratement on commentary on NXT was great. Hearing Cole tell him that he loved him during the retirement ceremony was a beautiful ending to that once hostile rivalry. Yeah, that was a weird moment back in the day with Cole. When Cole was a real, just real heel, commentator, I guess. Or, I don't know, he just had this weird run.
Worst time in wrestling. When Cole was being a heel announcer.
Yeah. That was a weird time. I will say that that's probably the time that I was probably the most distant from WWE, which isn't... which isn't obviously that distant, but it was it was a time where I was kind of I don't know, It was all right. I did not like Cole as a heel announcer at all. Josh also mentions the Team Hell No with Dr. Shelby segments. Great.
Oh yeah.
Never a dull moment. That was a great run. That was one of those. I feel like it was one of those moments where they just paired these two guys together, like they did with Kane and numerous people, the T-Booker, Dave, And that's an inside joke between Evan and I, Booker T. And who else? Who else did Kane team with? Like X-Pac way back in the day. Like Kane has just been passed around with tag team partners, and I feel like that was kind of like another one of these things. And then they just had this weird bond, and Daniel Bryan was doing like, you know, the yes thing and then the no thing, and then I don't know. It was just a really cool,
I'm not the weak link.
Yeah, it was just a really cool, like organic thing that happened, and you know, when the fans, quote unquote, like voted for the team Hell No, and like it was just cool. It was a really cool moment. I thought, you know, it was one of those tag teams that probably wasn't really expected to do much. They were just two guys whose their solo careers had kind of squandered, and then like they were just thrown in there together. But
I mean, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but read his book, because there's some funny stories he talks about with Kane. There's one that has to do with chairs and a cell phone, and there also has to be. There's one about tanning your taint. So
tanning your taint?
That's all I'm saying. You have to read the book.
Sounds amazing.
Read the book.
It was great that he was able to give Kane props during his retirement speech the other day too. He's like, I've been fortunate to meet, great people in this business, like absolute monsters, like Kane, who are actually like one of the smartest people that I know. I mean, which is pretty much what everybody has always said about Kane is here's this, 7-foot freaking monster who, when he's not in the ring, has his own insurance company, back home in Tennessee. So it's just it's funny hearing these stories about Kane. It's great.
Yeah. Let's see who else we have here. We have Ben Sear, who was a recent guest on the show. Ben Sear says best memory of Daniel Bryan was his WWE debut match against Jericho. I just don't really recall it. I mean, it's probably one of those. I'm assuming it was when he was in NXT or something, like when they did when Miz was like his mentor. I'm guessing that's kind of when that took place. That match. I'll have to go back and watch it, Benny. I'm sure it was an amazing match. Jericho wasn't, fat back then and annoying. Kidding. Chris Jericho doesn't listen to this show. Anyway, no.
He would just call you a has been and an ass cloud anyway. I mean, he just goes back to the old stuff. Right. He'd go back to the old stuff. He still does now to this very day. Isn't it great?
Exactly. Very circa 1998 Jericho. Let's see who else we have. Chris Mitchell says, let's see, Yeselmania, which WrestleMania, the big one. Obviously, that's the big moment of Daniel Bryan's career, winning the championship at WrestleMania. 2 matches in one night, beats Triple H, and then wins a triple threat match with him, Batista, and Randy Orton. Yeah, just amazing. Yeah. Like one of the best, probably one of the best performances ever.
And he was really beat up in that match too.
His shoulder was all like.
In the book, he talks about how beat up he was, and Randy Orton knew, like how mangled he was going into that match, and Randy really took care of him in that match.
Oh, really?
Says, yeah.
Yep. Nice. Randy Orton, huh? God. Love that Randall Orton.
I do.
I love Randy Orton. I can't wait for
He sounds like a reformed man in interviews anyway. I don't know, but like he's nice. I don't know. Like who the hell knows? It's Randy, so we can't really take that.
Yeah,
he's a viper. You can't trust him.
He's exactly right. I want to throw out one thing that
sure.
It's not a dream moment, but a wish that I wish this had happened if he were still wrestling type of deal. He had maybe 1 or 2 matches with CM Punk when they were in WWE. I mean, they used to go up and down the indies together. It would have been great to have them in some more feuds, because Punk had his heyday, like Bryan's big moments in WWE came right off the heels of Punk and the pipe bomb and his time, at the top. It would have been really great just to have them have this just really awesome feud, right in that period of time, because that was they had the biggest amount of fan support during that time in the WWE. So it would have been nice if they had a few more feuds.
Yeah, I mean they had the earlier stuff, like when with like AJ and stuff. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, but yeah, like when they were both like kind of at their peak. Oh my God, can you imagine that?
Oh, I mean, great.
Like just a WrestleMania match between those two. Oh my God, that would have been ridiculous.
And I think in the Colt Cabana interview, Punk talks about it, and he wanted to save working with Daniel Bryan till later on because Daniel Bryan was such a great babyface and he was such a rotten heel.
Yeah.
And they both had the indie mystique and stuff. You know, he wanted to save that for the biggest moments, you know, WrestleManias and stuff like that. And you know, he wanted them to keep Daniel Bryan as far away from him as possible.
Yeah, right. Makes sense.
That could have been. I mean, that really could have been a bona fide main event. People could have bought that as a main event.
Oh, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, of course. That would have been nuts. I mean, and CM Punk would have gotten his WrestleMania main event
Yeah, no kidding, right? He might still actually be there. Right
that he's still so bitter and sour about. But let's see. Moving on. Robbie Skelton says, "Does anyone remember Vicky Guerrero's Christmas party where Daniel was yelling no, while Mae Young once again gave birth to a hand?" Mae Young giving birth to a hand. The first time was bad enough.
Yeah. Do I want to remember is really the better question.
No. Yeah, there was. I mean,
Mae Young might have had the most hilarious comedic cameos.
she was great. Yeah, she was fantastic. Oh man, that's great. Let's see who else we got. Brandon Sear. Let's see. He says it took me a while to get on board with him. I thought the yes chant was dumb at first, but I was fascinated by how over he was with the crowd, so I started paying more attention and got into it as well. Yeah, I think. I mean, that's Daniel kind of mentioned that he wanted it to just be like annoying, and then it just took off, and it's crazy. I mean, like colleges were using it and stuff. And
yeah,
it's just it's nuts. So, Brandon Sear also says, I also read a post the other day that while training with HBK, he was initially pegged to be part of a cruiserweight division in WWE that never took off. How do you think his career would have been if that division was created and if he never got released and went indie? I don't know. I mean, that the cruiserweight thing I think was just a bad idea. I mean, for WWE because they didn't really do it well. If they did it well, it would be a different scenario. Like if they actually get time.
S.A. Rio should still be in the WWE. He could have been huge.
Love that S.A. Rio.
S.A. Rios. Greatest little used cruiserweight ever. Yeah. I don't know, man. I think that he might have gotten kind of pigeonholed, as like a cruiserweight, and it would have taken a long time for him to,
I think that's more on Vince though than the crowd,
Well, no, totally, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I think it was good for him to go indie for a while and get just all kinds of like,
oh yeah, like his indie cred pretty much opened the door for him to come back into WWE when he did.
Yeah.
To start his career because they knew how hot he was on the indies, and people were saying that he might be the greatest wrestler of all time. He was the best pure wrestler they had on the indie scene, and it was just, I think it was just tough for Vince where he was, smaller. He was a vegan.
Right.
He doesn't even eat meat.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you stick him in the cruiserweight division. Who's he going against? He's going to go against Shane Helms and Matt Hardy maybe, and like it's like Chavo. It's like I mean, nothing against those guys. They're all great performers, and the matches would have been incredible. But like, it does nothing for them to progress up the chain and become champ one day. So I'm kind of glad that it worked out the way it did.
I remember in the early 2000s, and my usual consumption of Pro Wrestling Illustrated or any of the After magazines, reading about Bryan Danielson. Like, this kid Bryan Danielson is all I ever would read about, like, or see, and almost every single one of these magazines about going all over the place, winning the Super J Cup, and just being like one of the best wrestlers on the planet. But I would keep like seeing this guy, and I'm like, he must be a great wrestler, but holy crap, is he small? I mean, I could never see, those early days when I would read about him in the magazines. I'm like, this this guy's amazing, but he'll never leave the Indies. I can't ever see this guy doing well in the WWE. And of course, how wrong was I? But like, it's funny looking back.
Styles is. I didn't realize he was that small.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I was like, wow, I would love to see this guy wrestle, but like it's never gonna happen in WWE because I'd have a better chance seeing him in the cruiserweight division in WCW or something. But that's
because that cruiserweight division was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
That was the wrestling that you watched on WCW. It was that wrestling and maybe
Well, NWO.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Let's see.
The NWO stuff was mostly just that was the soap opera part.
Yeah. And then the cruiserweights.
Cruiserweights.
Yeah.
Then you had Glacier and Mortis,
Which was obviously like a cool angle. We're not just saying that because we had Ray on the podcast, but let's see. Moving on, we've got Greg Marston, Gregulator, frequent guest on the podcast. He said definitely the love triangle with Punk and AJ. If for no other reason, we got some Punk Bryan matches. Plus, the chemistry between the three was awesome. Indeed, we kind of touched on that earlier, but yes, indeed, it was awesome. They were great. Very astute, Greg. Good job. Brandon Pease says Daniel Bryan is important because the dude just had to be on top. No, not because Vince or Triple H thought he should, but because the fans did. It was crazy watching everything they did to try and keep him out and how eventually they had no choice but to listen to the yes chants. It's pretty wild, actually, that a show driven by large crowds and arenas put so much effort into ignoring the audience. It was an exciting time because you really had no idea what would happen next. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those instances, one of those few instances where the whole thing wasn't kind of written out ahead of time and like drawn out. It was, again, it was kind of very organic and, the fans kind of made it happen. I mean, the whole thing was, they had this whole Batista thing lined up and then the fans were like, no, we don't want that at all. That's the worst.
Blue Tista.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was one of those moments where the fans actually just, no pun intended, but like twisted the arm of WWE. Like it was so
organic, and it was just great that it was one of the few times where WWE was actually called out on their bullshit. Because they always like to say, oh, we listen to our fans. Oh, we listen, the popularity of a wrestler is driven by the audience's reaction. Well, we all know that's horseshit. They're going to push who they want to push. And it was one of the few times where it was just so overwhelming, the fan backup, that they were like, well, we have no choice. If we don't have them go out there and succeed, they're going to riot. They're actually going to riot. So it was great for that one moment in time, and it's one of those things that obviously doesn't happen every day, and who knows when the next time it'll happen. But where the fans finally spoke up in unison, they said, no, we're not going to take Batista. We're not going to have Triple H, rammed down our throats for the 30 millionth time, which, I could go a whole hour on that whole deal with this year. But anyway, and it was like, no, Daniel Bryan's our champ. He's going to win at WrestleMania, and we're not accepting any other, BS excuse from you guys this time around. So it was great. Yeah, totally. And, one more, we got to give a shout out to Boosh, our buddy Boosh. He mentioned the moment Daniel Bryan, got fired in 2010 for spitting on Cena and choking Justin Roberts. We already touched on that, but I'll give Boosh a shout out there because he did bring it up in a text message to me. So that's, I believe, all the shout outs we have. Thanks, guys, for, tweeting and Facebooking and texting me your favorite Daniel Bryan moments or some questions about DB. I don't know, man. It's gonna be sad kind of moving on. I know we're kind of a little bit used to it because he's kind of been out for so long. But I
know it's just, but the roster's been so thin lately. You were just always hoping for that Daniel Bryan comeback.
Yeah.
Is he gonna make it back at this pay per view? Is he gonna make it back at this pay per view? And it just, now we know it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
One more piece off the board.
Yeah. I don't know who it was. It might have been Greg or somebody said in a text the other night that they were like selfishly waiting for like the Undertaker's gong to go off during the retirement speech, and I was like, that would have blown my pants off. Like I would have just like gone bananas if that happened.
Daniel Bryan, you can't retire until you face me at WrestleMania.
But yeah, I think like right up until the very end. I mean, well, not really up until the very end, but until like the end of Raw, like where the speech actually started to happen. I was the whole time I was still like a selfishly like thread of hope, saying like, oh, I want this to be a Swerve so bad, but unfortunately it's not, and it sounds like it's gonna be, for the best, obviously, if he's got stuff going on with his brain. So, I don't know.
Maybe he's gonna knock up Brie Bella and build, Earthship houses.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't feel too bad for the guy. I mean, he's married to Brie Bella. It's not like he gets to go home and have relations and start a family with Brie Bella.
Relations.
It's not like
she's a nice lady, Dave.
Like
she's a nice lady.
It's not like he's going out to the middle of the woods or something. Well, actually, he might be. He might still be going out in the middle of the woods, but never to be seen. I mean, I don't know. I mean, good for him, honestly. I mean, I know it's sad, but at the end of the day, it's his life's still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's next for him. I think I think he has a lot of options. He can stick around in WWE, do whatever they want him to do, obviously outside of actually wrestling. I don't know. I've heard people say, like, oh, you could be a manager. I don't think that's a good spot for him. I think he could be a trainer, like maybe down in NXT, maybe, or something.
Could you imagine? This is just my thought. If you had him and William Regal each scouting, I mean, William Regal's a scout right now for WWE.
Yeah.
If you had him and William Regal scout like new talent, like search the indies, go all over the place and find new. Can you imagine the crop of talents that they would probably find together? I mean, holy crap. I mean... Yeah,
and him and Regal are obviously close, and he's a mentor to him. So, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. And obviously, like, we don't know Daniel Bryan personally. We don't know what he's going to do. But, we're kind of just all, like, speculating, like, what would kind of make sense based on what we know of him. I could think of a few things. Obviously, what you just said is a very good idea. I know, like, it's funny, like some people, I've read some like crazy things too, like
you guys are both wrong. He's obviously going to get his own show on TLC where they build cob houses and composting toilets.
It's true.
And put up solar systems and
never bathe. Never.
Right.
Never use water.
He's going to grow that beard back out and get his hair all nice and dreaded up. And that's how it's going to be.
Yeah. That's another thing too, like
fun and crunchy Bryan.
His speech was great because it was like it hit everything. It was sad and funny all at the same time. Like he had like little jokes, like the beard thing was like a nice like little swerve, like the giant elephant in the room. I cut my hair or cut my beard or like that was all cool.
That's what Bree says every night.
That was great.
That was awesome. And then immediately following everybody in the crowds chanting, "That's what she said."
Were you chanting "That's what she said"?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Of course.
I love it.
You're a bad influence on your 12-year-old brother.
I really am. He probably came out of it totally. Yeah, if I had it my way, he would have been chanting bad things about the city of Pittsburgh. That's another story.
That is a story you're gonna have to tell after this. We're gonna cue this up, and you're gonna tell that story after this on a separate like mini podcast thing.
We're just gonna file it away and pull it out one day
for a rainy day. That's gonna be great.
Shane Douglas definitely knows who I am. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he does. Oh my god. So I don't know, man. There's so many things Daniel Bryan is gonna be awesome at in the future. They wanted to have kids, he said, so he'll be an awesome dad. He'll be just like cool trainer if he wants to be a trainer. I was thinking too, like another thing.
In his book, he has 2 different stints as a trainer. He's not that good.
No, really?
No,
really?
He's just not that good as a trainer.
Huh. Well, is that him saying that, or is that other people saying that?
Like he has a story about training Sarah Amato. And she like dislocates her shoulder, and he just keeps letting her train. She wants to.
Oh, no.
He's like, I'm a bad trainer.
Yeah. Nice. So I don't know. I've heard some people too, like some wild things on Twitter and stuff. People saying like, "Oh, he should be like CM Punk and go do MMA." I'm like, well, that doesn't
God,
count
no.
anything because he has concussion issues. So
Yeah.
I could see him doing like just straight grappling, like no hits to the head. Like doing jujitsu. I know he grapples, so he could do like some Naga tournaments and stuff. Like, why wouldn't you go do that? But I don't know. Nothing crazy.
Yeah. He's heading to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, right. He's heading to Abu Dhabi. But I don't know. It's gonna be sad to see him go. I'm just kind of. It's like we've all kind of been holding on to that glimmer of hope that he's going to come back, and now that's kind of gone. And it's definitely. I don't want to say cemented, but it's gone from like we're not going to see him dive through the ropes like Superman again. I don't think so. So it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. So I guess we'll wrap it up. We'll just go around the board real quick. Favorite Daniel Bryan moment, real quick. Dave, what do you got?
It's a tough one, but and I know it's the cliche, the one everybody's favorite, but definitely WrestleMania 30. I can't get over that one. That was awesome. Just too awesome for me. And I mean, on top of that, later on with the whole, and I know like WWE is really kind of like overblown this a bit and kind of taking advantage of the situation, but the whole deal with Connor too. The kid that Daniel Bryan hung out with that weekend too. When you throw all that together, I mean,
just take all the moments, Dave.
Yeah, I was gonna say just take.
Sorry.
Go.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah. Harmon, what about you?
Mine was when John Cena got to pick his was it SummerSlam opponent.
Yeah.
And he chose Daniel Bryan out of everybody up there.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. The fans went nuts. He just went crazy and just started yesing. He was like yesing right at John Cena's face.
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Yeah. I think mine was when and Daniel Bryan actually mentioned it the other night during his speech, is when they were trying to promote the John Cena Randy Orton match, and they had all the former champs in the ring. And like Ziggler was out there, and Jack Swagger was out there.
Mark Henry, Rey Mysterio.
The Great Khali was out there. He didn't know why he was out there, but he was out there. And, and Daniel Bryan was out there, and he, the fans were just chanting Daniel Bryan, and he wasn't supposed to be the focal point, and he ended up being the focal point. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say the start of it, but it was kind of like the start of it being like really real for WWE, and like that they probably looked at themselves and been like, okay, Jesus, like they're not letting go of this guy. Like we got to obviously do something with him. So, because this isn't even about him. He's just like in the ring amongst all these other wrestlers, and like they're the guy. This doesn't have anything to do with them, but they're chanting his name. We're trying to promote Randy Orton versus John Cena. So.
In a unification match.
Right. And I just thought it was so cool. Like, it was just so cool. And, and we'll just, since Dave took a couple, I'll just take one more. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Like where they took over Raw. Like, I thought that was such a cool moment. Like,
the yes movement.
Yeah, the yes movement. Like fans are jumping the barricade, diving in the ring, taking over, like with t-shirts on. Like, it was just so fucking cool. It's just it's moments like that you don't see a lot of anymore. It's specifically since he's been gone. Like, I don't want to say that it's like, oh, you don't see it anymore, because that wasn't that long ago, but it's like there's a void there without him, and it's going to take something and someone pretty special to kind of at least even attempt to fill that void. So and I look forward to it, but we'll see. So, all right, guys, we'll wrap it up unless you guys have anything else. Dave, thanks for coming on, man. I want to plug anything? You got anything worth plugging, pal?
I'm plugging the end of Triple H being the WWE champion. That's
okay.
Oh God, this just, Lord help me. I wasn't able to be on the podcast after the Royal Rumble, but just painful. Yeah, and this is exactly what I worried about. Like when Triple H, like this is what all fans were worried about when Triple H got moved up into the higher offices of the WWE. It's like, oh great, the man's gonna like book himself champion, and now we're going to be given Reigns versus Triple H. I know I'm going off the rail, but that's any way of Triple H no longer being the champion.
Hey, that's how Ben Sear got on the show.
Yeah.
He-
Right. Yep. All good.
He tweeted us at the Royal Rumble. I quit. I canceled my subscription.
Yeah. But hey, man. So where are you at on Twitter, Dave?
I'm at Dave_Dyer. I'm still doing stuff for Hero Sports, writing up some stories for them. I'm actually covering college baseball this spring.
Nice.
Stuff with college baseball. So all the divisions from divisions 1 through 3. So there'll be plenty of coverage there. So it's pretty cool.
Beautiful.
They sending you south?
I wish that would be awesome. They're like,
Oh.
yeah, if you can, it would be great. Like, yeah, we're gonna jet you over to University of Arizona, doing some coverage down there. I wish that would be cool. Unfortunately, most of my stuff will be from the old home office with the old cell phone. So
You'd be like, congratulations, Dave. You're going to Olympia, Washington.
yes, you get to go right down the street to Seattle University to do a story. It's gonna be great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Harmon, where are you at on Twitter, my man?
I'm at Harmon316.
Yes, you are. And I am at Johnny Fashion. You guys can check out at SmarkandMark_PW on Twitter. That's the home base for SmarkandMark.com. Go there. Go to SmarkandMark.com. Check out all kinds of content and columns, podcasts, videos. I don't know, everything that you've ever wanted to do with professional
Tweet us.
wrestling.
We think we're funny. I mean,
We think
Colt Cabana doesn't think we're funny, and Bull Dempsey doesn't think we're funny anymore. But
Jock Sampson thinks we're funny.
Jock Sampson thinks we're funny. Missy Hyatt thought it was funny for a second.
Grrr, Missy Hyatt.
I'm pretty sure Colt did the same thing.
Oh, did he? Yeah. God damn it. Oh, Colt's going to block me. Oh, man. So anyway, yeah, I usually say peace out, y'all, but I think I'll end it with the popular hashtag going around. Thank you, Daniel Bryan.
Thank you, Daniel Bryan.
Thank you, Daniel Bryan.
Thank
Yes,
you,
yes,
Daniel.
yes.